Hello friends, welcome. Friends, yesterday the government of India came out with this document. This document talks about the India's GDP growth, uh, press note on advance estimate of annual gross domestic product for FY25 and quarterly estimate for the third quarter, which is FY25, right? So this is basically a third quarterly estimate. Now, by looking at this document, whoever is not totally entrenched into these analysis, you will not be able to get a bigger picture because this number quotes many significant things of achievement, which we have achieved in the past financial year, which is the preceding financial year FY25, and the numbers have been quoted as that we have achieved a growth of 9.2%, which is the highest in the previous financial year except for FY22. So there have been many accomplishments which have been quoted, and we also have said that we are going to observe a growth rate of 6.2% in Q3. We have observed a growth rate of 6.2 in Q3, and we will actually have a yearly growth rate of around 6.5% for the current financial year. So if you look at this document, there are so many tables, etc., and people have been analyzing this document. So what I've done is I've extracted all these numbers and I put it in this chart, which is right in front of you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through these numbers and to show you a very high level view from FY12 till FY25 for all the financial years, both on absolute as well as on growth terms, so that you will be able to get a very good feel as to what we are looking at and why we grew at so fast in FY24 and why our growth numbers in FY25 is going to be so slow. That is 6.4%, right? So why it is low when we grew at 9.4%. So let me just show you the growth in rupee terms. 6.5%. So here we are projecting 6.5%, but in FY24 we projected our GDP growth was highest in 12 years. You see, this is the story, except in FY22 where this was because of the base effect. We grew very fast because the base, if I show you the absolute number, you'll see that the base was low. It dipped down here. And then because of the base effect, this number was looking very large. So this is the reason why this year was considered as an exception. This FY22 year was considered an exception. And now, after having stabilized after COVID, this growth of FY24 is considered as a significant growth. And how much that we have grown? Let's look at the growth, 9.2%. And the projected growth for FY25 is 6.5%. Now friends, we have grown at 9.2% in FY24 and in FY25 it is only 6.5%. Why? That is the question that we are going to answer in this video. And we will also look at the dimensions which contribute to the various GDP growth, and we'll see how the individual dimensions have contributed and what kind of constraint that we are seeing, both from the point of view of consumption as well as the various verticals which contributes to our economy, which is the GVA. We'll look into that also. So this video is going to give you a very high level overview. So be with me and you can get access to this chart to do the analysis yourself, because I have updated this chart for all the quarters. So how did I do that? Because only the 3-quarter estimates numbers are released by the government. Here if you see the quarters, all the quarters numbers are not available. I'm going to show you the final this. If you look at this, the Q1, Q2, Q3, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 is absent. And I have extracted the Q4 number from the annual number. That's how I have done. Okay. Now let's go back again into this chart. So you can see here very simply that we had 5.5%, 6.4%, 7.4%. We kept on growing, and then after the demonetization was hit, because of that effect, we kind of went down, nosedive, and the COVID actually took us to the bottom. And then from that we just jumped up because of the base effect. Now we are stabilizing and our GDP grew at 9.4%, 9.2%, and now we are dropping. Right? This is the story right in front of you. So let's look at this story with a little bit of color. What is going on here? So in order for us to do that, we'll take the growth numbers later. Let's look at the absolute numbers, because absolute numbers are going to tell you a story which the growth sometimes will not be able to tell because of the base effect. Base effect is very, very, distortive. So you will not be able to understand, sometimes the growth will be very high, sometimes the growth will be very low. So let's look at from a yearly point of view before we dive into the quarterly time frame view. So you see here, what we have done is, again, there has been, so we grew, right? We dipped here. You see, you dipped here in the COVID here. Then there was a sharp increase, and their growth was 9 point, something, which is very, very high, 9.8%. And then this increase was also good, right? But from here to here, there was a substantial increase. So this base effect, 161.77 lakh crores, was a lower base. That's why we grew at a very, very high rate. Or you can basically call it in different ways, right? Means that even if you don't consider this as a lower base, because if you see here, 152.2 lakh crores, then 161.7 lakh crores, which roughly around 11 lakh crores we grew. And then from 161.7 to 176.5 is more than 11 lakh crores. So this number comes out to be around 15 lakh crores. Now from here to here, 176 to 188, right? If you do this calculation, this number is not, 15 lakh crores, because of the reason it is, if you look at this number from an absolute term is less, right? See, let's do the calculation. 188 minus 176.5, it comes out to be 11.5 lakh crore. And that is the reason why we are growing at a lower rate, right? Though we grew at a very high rate, in absolute terms, we were not growing in FY25. You understand? We grew at 9.2% because there was an absolute terms, we grew at a very large number, right? So you can say that because of this base effect, we grew very, very, significantly in this year FY25, and that base effect is creating a problem, and therefore we are not able to grow at the higher rate in FY25. So you can look at it in this way. But let's look at other numbers also, which will give us a sense what is going on. Now, private sector final consumption expenditure. This is very, very significant because the economy is, largely contributed by this. You see this. It is 106 lakh crores of the 188 lakh crores. It's the largest chunk. So if I do an absolute in a percentage term, 106 divided by 188, it comes out to be 56.38%, which is very, very significant. So our GDP is actually driven by private final consumption expenditure. Now, if you look at the trend here, it was showing, a higher trend, and then it kind of, went down because of COVID, and now it is showing a rising trend, which is a very good kind of indicator of our economy, that the private final consumption expenditure is getting a trajectory, a growth trajectory. Now, gross fixed capital formation is also, if you see here, it kind of is, went down and it is also going up. But if you look at from here to here, the growth of gross fixed capital formation is not that significant, from 159.2 to 62.8. So let's do the calculation. It is 62.8 minus 59.2. It comes out to be 3.6. So 3.6 is the number in absolute number. Now, if I do it from 59.2 minus 54.4 from the earlier year, which 59.2 minus 54.4, it comes out to 4.8. So in absolute term, we actually have done better here in this between these two blocks. And because of that, because we are not doing so good in gross fixed capital formation, because our capital expenditure is not going very, very significant to contain fiscal deficit. We have to pull down fiscal deficit. So this number is not looking very, very good, right? The government final consumption expenditure is also, you can see that it's kind of stable. It is not growing in absolute terms, right? There was a huge jump here. Can you see this? Right, that's why this year was showing out very, it kind of stood out as at 9.2% because of these jumps. right? And then let's look at exports. Exports also were stagnant here because exports is a very misnomer. Unless you look at imports, corresponding imports, the export does not give you any kind of great feeling. The reason is that the imports will pull down whatever you achieve in exports. So unless you contain imports, your exports are not going to tell you the good real story. Okay. So now to summary is that we grew at a higher rate in FY24. FY24 is because of a lower base, right? We did in absolute term we actually did larger, and we are not able to grow at the same rate in absolute term because of certain constraint that we are facing, which is gross fixed capital formation as the government final consumption expenditure. Right, these are the two important things, and maybe exports and import, because imports are also growing significantly, and that is diluting whatever the growth rate we are achieving in exports. Okay, so that's the summary of the situation. Now let's look at a quarterly time frame. Quarterly time frame will give us a little bit of an understanding what is going on. And as I told you, the last quarter, which is the FY24 FY25 Q4 number, this has been an extrapolated number because these numbers are not announced. It's an extrapolated number from the yearly number. Now, if you see here in absolute term what is going on here. So we have been growing, right? So it's like a cyclic affair. For 4 quarters we grow and then we dip down. Then we grow for 4 quarters, then we dip down. Then we grow for 4 quarters, then we dip down. Then we grow for 4 quarters and dip down. Now, here is an important point. Let me just show you the growth. Quarterly growth. Now, if you see here in the last quarter, we always look at numbers in isolation, and that's the problem. The last quarter it was 5.6%. This quarter it is 6.2%, and then in the next quarter it is expected to be 7.6% if you assume that the yearly aggregated number is the right number. And for the yearly aggregated number to be the right number, we have to be dependent on private final consumption expenditure, which has to grow at 9.9%. Gross fixed capital formation has to grow by 6.4%. Government final consumption expenditure has to grow from 4.2%. And then the exports have to grow at 7.7%, and import has to be largely stable. Now let's look at from an absolute term, because that is where the main story is. Absolute terms. Now, absolute terms, you will see that the private final consumption expenditure is not expected to do very good in FY24 Q4. You see this? This is almost same, which is definitely a matter of concern. Why it is the same? Because it should be growing, right? If you see here, so it's like very strange, if you look at the government, the gross fixed capital formation, which is following a cyclic affair, right? It is growing like this. But for private consumption, final consumption expenditure, I don't think that there are any kind of seasonality, cyclic. There is some, but I don't think that in quarter 3, I think quarter 3 it kind of picks up. So here also in quarter 3 it picked up. It is likely to go down if you show the trend. So we have been able to hold it to 28.2, which is a risk, because if you look at this, in every quarter, in the Q4, the number goes down. So this may likely go down if you follow the trend. You see, in all Q3 to Q4, the numbers have been going down. So how can you assume this number? So this is a projection. So this is where the risk is. 28.2 that we see here may be a risk. Then we may not be able to grow to this number of 51.4 lakh crores, which will give us a 7 point. What is the growth number? What was the growth number? Let's see. It is going to give us 7.6%. 7.6% because of this reason which I told you, that private final consumption expenditure is cyclic in nature, right? So it is expected that it is going to fall given the past experience, right? See, then gross fixed capital expenditure formation, gross fixed capital formation is shown to go into a spike, which is 16.9 from 15.1. Though it could be because we have a precedence, right? You see, always you have to look at precedence, because precedence will tell you the real picture. Suddenly something is not going to change, out of the blue, right? You have to look at, and that's why it is important to investigate these numbers in this manner which I'm showing you, because those numbers which are being spelled out in a standalone manner does not tell the story. So the risk here for FY24 Q4 is on account of this 28.2. It can go down, and it may not be that much risky here because this is not a very significant. So government final consumption expenditure is not that significant. And I think exports should follow the similar trend. Import may follow, depending. See, it all depends upon the risk that we have externally because of the US tariff, regulations, which might create some problem. But that is going to be in the next fiscal year, not in this quarter, right? So this quarter, the whole thing is dependent upon private consumption expenditure. Will we be able to break the trend of decreasing from third quarter to fourth quarter, right? So that's the summary here as far as the GDP constant is concerned. Now let's look at GVA constant. GVA constant is important. Let's forget about the current. I don't have the time. You can access this chart and do it yourself. Let's look at GVA because sectorally how the contribution is towards the overall GDP. What is GVA? GVA is the overall how GDP can be extracted from GVA. You add GVA with the net taxes, you will get GDP. So GVA is the contribution from the various sectoral part of the economy, agriculture, mining, etc., and onto which you add net taxes, you will get GDP, right? So let's look at these and then we'll close this video. Otherwise, it will get too So I'll do a yearly time scale, and in the yearly time scale, you will see that this will give us a complete year picture of FY25, and you will see that the contribution from agriculture sector is sustaining. So agriculture is a very important sector. Mining, actually it went down, but it is insignificant, does not matter. Manufacturing is also doing pretty well, not that significantly well, but it is doing well because manufacturing is 29.5 lakh crores, agriculture is 24.8 lakh crores. Construction, we are doing well, right? Trade, hotel and commerce, we are doing well. Financial services, this is very good, right? You see here, and defense and etc. And on taxes, we have been doing significantly well, right? So there have been, the trend of the contribution of the various sectoral sector has been on trend. It is not that we have been doing very, very bad, except the manufacturing sector, if you see, it is kind of stabilized here, right? From 23.3 lakh crores to 29.5 lakh crores, there is not a large jump. That's why this contribution, this base, because this base was very high, 161.5 lakh crores. Therefore, the base could not be bumped up because of manufacturing right in front of you, right? So this is the GVA story. Now let's look at the final one thing regarding the $5 trillion economy, which I've already done. So I will do one just preview for the viewers who are interested in seeing how, because we don't have the FY26 numbers here. So I have just kept this blank, and this is a projected number of the government. So I'll remove this -1 and put it 0. And then I will basically take in value in USD million. So you can see that we are in FY25, we are at 3.898 trillion dollars, right? So we are close to 4, not even touch 4, right? And the biggest contributor is private sector final consumption expenditure, which is 2.397 trillion. Then we have gross fixed capital formation, which is actually have contributed significantly to our economy, which is 1.154 trillion. Government final consumption expenditure is around 395 trillion. And then we have got exports at around 825 trillion, and imports also have substantially increased, and which has pulled down all the benefits that we have from exports, which is at 116 trillion. So friends, that's all in this video. There could be some other dimension to talk about, which I don't have time in this video, but you have access to this chart. You can go to my website, you can go and you can get an access to this chart. I'm going to paste a link of this chart, right? And then you can do your own analysis by doing, playing with the numbers. Thank you friends for your time. I'll come back with a new video next time.